Well, thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to be talking with you tonight. And I love being able to share a bit about what Seed Savers Exchange is and the work that we are engaged in as well. So, thank you for joining us this evening for some information about the seed collection that is here at Seed Savers Exchange, and also ways that you can engage with this collection and participate in our work of preserving heirloom seeds and stories. So I am going to just run through a few slides that it's always fun to pull out some images from the seeds and stories that we are maintaining here as part of a seed collection at Seed Savers Exchange. And I want to emphasize, I guess, just right from the start, that seeds are more than seeds. It is really beautiful how seeds can be carriers of stories, of um, of cultural meaning, and the fact that seeds are these vessels of living memory is something which we uh, want people to recognize. Uh, they are ways that we can capture and preserve stories about our own culture, about human experiences, and this is all in addition to the fact that they're little packages of germplasm and biodiversity that are an integral part of our food system. So here at Seed Savers Exchange, we are maintaining a collection of many different types of not only seeds but plants as well. And the collection has been growing over the last 50 or so years, and we'll touch on some of the types of seeds that are here, places where they've come from, and some of the stories attached to them. Now, the fact that stories can be very diverse and tell us many different things about the seed and about the people who have grown a variety, I think is really, really special. So why do stories matter? And there's several main points that we feel are um, the like the shouting out important points of seed stories and how they really help tell us who in a way who we are as their caretakers. Seeds are they help preserve culture and stories about people and culture. Seed stories also give us an indication of how a variety could be used or what adaptations it might possess, places where it can grow well, uses, recipes, ways that people have utilized the variety. Seed stories can also help us create opportunities for education, and that also enables more public access, oftentimes, to seeds. Seed stories can also help protect cultural and intellectual rights. For example, in this photo, Heike Marie Eubanks, who is pictured on the left side of the photo, is a home gardener from the Pacific Northwest, and she donated a variety of Brussels sprout to the collection here at Seed Savers Exchange. It's one that she herself bred and developed. So having her story of how she created that variety essentially helps document its origin and credits her with her role in how that variety came to be. But seed stories also can help revive forgotten or endangered seeds. Um, I've heard different types of stories about, oh, there used to be something grown in a particular region or something associated with a culture or people group. And having those stories still passed down helps us remember those varieties or gives us clues if we're trying to find a variety that was once grown or popular in a region. Now, here at Seed Savers Exchange, we have a multifaceted approach to preservation. And we want to emphasize that we need the entire community to help in this work. This is not something that Seed Savers Exchange itself can do all by itself. It takes many hands. And seeds that have been stewarded in home gardens are often the heirloom varieties that people think about today. Now, over the course of our 50-year history here at Seed Savers Exchange, there have been a number of home gardeners who decided to donate seeds, and those have gone into the seed bank collection that we are maintaining here at our headquarters in Northeast Iowa. And the center photo shows the interior of our long-term storage freezer. All of those foil packets are different samples of seeds that are being stored at 0 degrees Celsius. And that type of freezer storage allows us to get a very long shelf life out of the varieties that are in the collection. However, the varieties aren't really serving their main purpose or living up to their full potential if we are not creating ways for people to access the collection. And seed access is something that we are always trying to find new ways to encourage and make possible. So I'll get into a bit about that as well. We have different opportunities for seed swaps or for events, but we also encourage people to access the collection through a program that we have called the Exchange. And this is a online platform where you can search seeds that are being cared for by us, by Seed Savers Exchange, but it includes a much larger community of home gardeners as well who create online profiles and then list the varieties which they themselves have been growing and saving in their home gardens. So the exchange is kind of a one-stop shopping place where you're able to browse the Seed Savers Exchange collection and see which varieties are available, but also potentially connect with someone who uh, lives in your same state, or maybe a home gardener who is across the country but growing a type of crop or a type of variety that you're interested in. And we are connecting gardeners really coast to coast and internationally as well. So on our main Seed Savers Exchange website, you can find links to the exchange itself, and I really encourage people to browse and take a look. There's also a couple of community science programs that we facilitate. One is called ADAPT, which is basically a trials program, and participants are able to sign up, express interest in a certain crop, and then receive 3 varieties, which they are growing at home and evaluating themselves, but providing feedback on those varieties as well. And it gives us an indication of how a single variety performs in different locations across the country. And all of the data is shared live through a website called Seed Linked, where you can actually browse trial data from the last several years, not just not just the current year, 2025, but people are submitting data right now, and it's always interesting to analyze that at the end of the season and see which varieties have done especially well. We've begun to use this data as a tool as we identify varieties in the Seed Savers Exchange collection, which might be good options for wider distribution through the annual seed catalog that we produce every year. So lots of good information coming out of the ADAPT program, and I encourage you to take a look at the just how the program works if you're at all interested in being a trial gardener. But we also have a second community science program called Renew, where experienced seed savers are given a variety from the collection, which they're growing for seed and then returning to Seed Savers Exchange to be put back into long-term storage or potentially to be distributed through the exchange to other home gardeners. So the Renew program is a way folks can actively participate in helping to steward the collection by growing varieties at home. Now, the collection here at Seed Savers Exchange really started in about 1981. And there was, always this emphasis on heirloom varieties right from the start, varieties that had an aspect of cultural heritage to them. But we have also been interested in varieties that are simply at risk and rare, or varieties that are kind of new and novel or have been improved. And also varieties that are just really adaptable and can be grown over a large region. So in the real early days, when our staff was small, I can only imagine the amount of correspondence that was coming in. But I love this photo that kind of shows the the desk of our co-founder, Kent Whaley, um, and just all of the different packages of, like, those aren't all letters. Some of those packages definitely contain seed. And I imagine a number of those ended up in the seed bank collection later on. Now, I've used the word heirloom a couple of times so far, but I wanted to kind of acknowledge that it is a word that doesn't have a hard and fast definition. And I often hear from people who want to know, well, what really is an heirloom? So our staff defined the word heirloom for ourselves a few years ago to basically indicate any variety that has been grown, saved, and shared. And we decided to assign a 20-year minimum or value to the definition as well for our purposes of identifying varieties in the seed bank that we felt were heirloom varieties. And our co-founder, Kent Whaley, first heard the term heirloom from this gentleman named John Withy, who was a bean collector in Massachusetts. And Ken, kind of asked John, I hope you don't mind, but could I steal that word heirloom? Because it applies so perfectly to vegetable varieties that have been grown and maintained for multiple generations or decades. And John said, oh, that's perfectly fine because I stole the word from somebody else. He had heard the word heirloom used by a horticulture professor at the University of New Hampshire by the name of Jesse Hepler. And Professor Hepler was a plant breeder, but also keenly interested in home saved heirloom varieties that he came across as a judge at local county fairs. He would judge produce and occasionally request if, could I perhaps have some of those seeds from the variety that had been brought into the fair. So in University of New Hampshire publications dating back to at least the 1940s, I know the word heirloom is being used in association with vegetables there. Now, Mr. John Withy was a early seed donor to the collection here as well. He had gathered over 1,000 different types of beans during his retirement years. It had become a hobby, but then when his collection grew too large for him to take care of himself, he shared the collection with our co-founders, Kent Whaley and Diane Ott Whaley, in about 1981. So pictured here are just a few of the varieties from John's collection, but it helped form the basis of the seed bank that is here today. And you might be curious to know just how many varieties are at Seed Savers Exchange now and which crops are those? Well, there's more than 20,000, we call them accessions or individual donations that are being maintained in the seed bank. That includes an apple orchard, and that includes some crops that we maintain as plants in the ground instead of seeds. But altogether, there are more than 235 different species of 100 different crops. And 10 of those crops are shown here with their relative size in regards to how much of the collection they represent. So beans and tomatoes are the two largest crops that we maintain. Pepper comes in as number 3, and then other crops such as lettuce, apple, corn, squash, pea, and then potato and melons round out the top 10. So altogether, those 10 crops are about 70% of all of the different varieties that are here in the seed bank. Now, seed stories are very important to us, but we haven't necessarily always had the tools or resources to record those stories in full. So, as seed historian, one of my jobs is actually to research individual varieties that are here at the seed bank in order to learn more about them. And that might be as simple as transcribing donor letters or handwritten logbooks that have not been digitized yet so that we can transfer that information into our collection database. But we have also recorded information in a lot of different ways over the decades. And we've had different iterations of a database. So sometimes we have to look at those actual database records and determine um, what might this shorthand represent, or these acronyms be indicating, or uh, can I really trust this piece of information in this field because I think we've used this database field inconsistently over the years. So there's a little bit of sleuthing when it comes to assessing how much information do we have about each variety, where are the gaps, and how can we potentially track down or research additional info. Sometimes that additional info is in our own Seed Savers Exchange publications. Maybe when we did a member profile on a person in our community who was a known gardener with an interest in a certain crop. Perhaps they donated some of those varieties to the collection here. Or there could be other published material out there like university bulletins that describe new varieties being developed or introduced to the seed trade. It might be historic catalogs that tell us exactly who and when um, an individual variety was developed and introduced. And all of the digital resources available online have certainly made my job a little bit easier than when I first started more than a decade ago. And I have to admit that tracking down that type of information is one of my favorite things that I enjoy doing. Now, there is always the best case scenario is if we can reconnect with the actual seed donor who had shared the variety with us initially. And one example of that is the information that we have been able to record about a bean called Aunt Molly in the seed bank that was donated to us about 20 years ago by a home gardener named Connie Kratz. And this is a white-seeded wax pole bean that Connie's family in Iowa had been growing for several generations. And in Connie's donation letter, she said that while this bean is named for my great aunt Molly, her full name was Amelia Brockman. And Molly Brockman had immigrated to the United States with her family as a child. They came from Germany in 1852 from Paderborn, Germany, which is in the northwestern part of that country. And they settled in the Iowa City area. And Molly's father was a wagon maker and a farmer, and Molly herself made her living through needlework later on, and other types of sewing. Now, when Connie donated the variety to Seed Savers Exchange, it was really spurred by the fact that she had only just recovered seeds. This bean was something that Connie and her mother had grown years before, but then, like so many things that can happen, Connie lost track of the seeds. I'm guessing that perhaps they put them away in the cupboard or for storage, didn't grow them often enough. Maybe the seed no longer germinated the next time she tried to. But she was absolutely delighted when, at a family reunion, she discovered a cousin named Catherine Simon was still growing the variety and actually had brought seeds to the family reunion to hand out to other family members. So Connie was able to reunite with this bean, and because of nearly losing it, she decided to donate the variety to Seed Savers Exchange. Now, by the time we started to review Connie's donation letter and try to identify, is there any way we can speak with her, learn a little bit more about this bean, we discovered that Connie had passed away, but we were able to connect with Catherine Simon, her cousin, and lo and behold, Catherine was the genealogist of the family. So she generously shared a number of photos and anecdotal information that she had collected about Molly Brockman over the years. There's two pictures of Molly actually at the very center of the photo, one when she was a young woman and one a little bit later in life. But it was absolutely thrilling to be able to put a picture to the name of this bean and to learn a little bit more about Molly herself. In fact, her local newspaper did a little article about Molly when she turned 90 years old. And I wish I had that date written down. It would have been sometime in the 1940s or probably the 1940s, I'm guessing here. But even at age 90, Molly was still gardening and was known for this bean. So, thanks to descendants of Molly's sister, because Molly herself never actually married, but descendants of the family today are still growing this variety. And we had a chance to meet Catherine Simon and with several of her daughters and granddaughters when they came to visit Heritage Farm a few years ago. So that's the real icing on the cake when we can reconnect with a donor and ask all sorts of questions about that family stewardship, which help to enhance the story, tell us a little bit more, so that as we are sharing this variety with other people, we can really, really give everyone the full portrait of where this variety came from and why it's special to the people who have grown it. Now, with a collection of more than 20,000 varieties right now, you might be wondering, why are we continuing to accept donations? And yes, the collection is still growing. We accept about 15 to 20 new donations each year, but it's really because uh, diversity in seeds and stories is dynamic. And those varieties are still continuing to be developed, they are evolving, and there are certainly gaps in the Seed Savers Exchange collection that we would like to fill, and types of stories and types of cultural heritage that are underrepresented. So yes, we do still accept donations, and there's a few questions that we like to ask as we are talking with a donor that really centers around the stewardship story and why the variety is special to them. So we always want to identify that this variety is open pollinated, meaning it breeds true from year to year, that it's relatively stable, that there is that 20 years minimum of stewardship, either by the donor or by their family, and that part of that stewardship has also taken place in the United States. So histories with, or varieties with a history of use in the United States are that's an aspect that the collection here focuses on. And we really require donor permission to be able to share the seeds and stories with the public, because we want to be able to celebrate these varieties and create public access to the collection as well. So that permission to share is very important. Now there's some questions relating to the stewardship history that we always like to ask, because we want to identify not only how long has the donor grown this variety, but who is that person that they received it from, and the person farthest back in the chain of stewardship who we can identify as also having grown the variety. And essentially, how old is this tomato or this variety of corn? And folks often have a name of their own that they call the variety. We never attempt to identify a variety here at Seed Savers Exchange. We rely on what the donor has called it themselves. And the locations where the donor has grown this variety is also very important to us. But the questions that I really love hearing the answers to are, why is this special or meaningful to you? There has to be a reason why the donor has been growing this variety year after year. And we want to know from them, why do they feel it's worth to preserve? So those questions really get at the heart of the connection that this donor has with the seeds and why it's special in their eyes. Now, sometimes we're able to supplement the donor's information with a little bit of research of our own, or sometimes folks have information about their maybe their parents or grandparents who also grew this variety, and can provide some extra details about the the life and escapades of folks sometimes. There are entertaining stories that we often hear, and I'm sure that sometimes they might not be entirely factual or truthful, because stories can get embellished. It is easy to exaggerate or extrapolate information sometimes, but the stories that have been passed down are the stories that we want to record. So it doesn't necessarily matter if the story is entirely factual, but it is always nice if there's a little bit of primary source documentation to accompany some of the stories. If we can clarify spellings of names or dates of immigration, that does make the story more interesting as well. Now, we also need to ask questions about the variety itself, about how tall it grows, or what color are the seeds, or how is this used by the donor? Are there any recipes or traditions that this variety is a part of? So, those garden practices are also very important. And it provides a baseline so that our staff knows what to expect when we grow the variety here in the future, because we want to be certain that if we see something a little bit questionable, that we know, oh, this is okay for the variety. There's a little bit of variation in fruit size or fruit color, and it allows us to identify um, whether or not we have to be worried or take action about something that we are seeing in the field, whether we need to rogue plants or collect seed from every plant that's being grown, and helps us preserve the variety in the same manner that the donor had also been growing it. Now, an example of one recent donation story that I really enjoy is the Ritzy softball plum tomato, which came to us from a gardener named Regina Santori in, she actually lives in Tennessee, but her family has roots in New York, and before that in Italy. And this tomato is one that her grandfather's sister decided to, well, her grandfather's sister sent the seeds from Italy after her brother, Vito Rizzi, had immigrated to the United States and had settled in New York State. Now, Regina is also a bit of a family genealogist, and she shared these photos of her grandfather, Vito, both from his World War I Army days and also from the 1930s when he was an employee at the Endicott Johnson shoe factory in Endicott, New York. And we have an image here also of his back garden, which as a child, Regina remembers all of the loving care that he took in growing this variety of tomato that had come from his family in Italy. Regina shared this tomato with us in 2022 and said that it's originally from the Apulia region of southeastern Italy. And when Vito asked his sister, who had actually remained in Italy, to send him the seeds, she hid them in the letter that she wrote by putting them in between the flaps of paper where the glue was sealing the envelope shut, because she was worried that they might get confiscated as the letter came into the United States. But Regina has childhood memories of her grandparents growing and cooking this variety, and uh, I I love one story that she shared because she said that while you can eat these these tomatoes in a sandwich or just sliced. What they're really wonderful for is tomato sauce. And uh, Regina commented that every Sunday as a child, we would stop by my grandparents' house after church since it was so close by. There was a distinct smell to my grandmother's basement kitchen etched in my brain, the smell of these tomatoes being turned into pasta sauce. It smelled so good, yet I was never offered any. My cousin Michael and his family were much closer to my grandparents than we were, and a few years ago I told him this story, ending with, "You probably got to eat it all the time." Michael said no, he didn't. I never got any either. Now Regina knows why. It was simply because her grandmother was canning it. She must have gone nose blind to it and never even noticed that the heavenly scent was driving the rest of us crazy. She was just focused on getting it canned for the winter. Now, it's a real bonus when a donor is able to share recipes that a particular variety is well suited for or has been used by the family in. So that is a growing area of collection documentation that we are hoping to enhance and improve, because that's often, a gateway for trying a new variety. If you know what it's good for, then you might be a little bit more tempted to try growing a tomato or a pepper yourself. Now, I think that ultimately, documenting and recording seed stories, those stories about stewardship and about our connections to the people and the varieties is it makes a lot of exciting things possible, because these stories help to pass along information about our ancestors, about the gardeners who came before us, who year after year faithfully planted and grew and cared for these varieties. And that information can also, in turn, guide the hands of today's growers as well, as people are experimenting with new varieties, with new crops that they haven't grown before. It helps us know techniques and ways of growing things which we may need to know about or may need to try in our climate. And seed stories also just reconnect us to those values of care and community and continuity as well. I love that stories passed down from generation to generation um, carry information about people and about events and about those traditions and values that folks hold dear. So I think the note that I'd like to end on is that really by telling a seed's story, we give future generations not just a chance to grow it, but a chance to know it and to really know these varieties intimately and well. So I am eager to hear questions from the audience if there are aspects of the collection or of Seed Savers Exchange that folks are interested in hearing about. We have a little bit of time for questions as well. So I think I will turn things back over to Anne now. And I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us this evening to hear a little bit about our work here at Seed Savers Exchange. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. If anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll share them with Sarah and we can all hear the answer. Um,
As Anne and I were visiting just before the program started, I enjoyed the question. So, what does it take to be a seed historian? Um, and I had to admit that I actually have a horticulture background, but a love of history as well, which has proven really, really useful for this type of work because there's a lot of records here about the collection that we are trying to decipher and organize and digitize. So having that love of history has been very, very useful. But I think also the patience for digging through records like that. It doesn't hurt to be able to um, sift through boring papers for quite a while as we are organizing.
One question is the collection available to the public to grow ourselves? So can people obtain seeds that are in the exchange?
Yes, it definitely is. And I am going to, let's see, I should have
You
access
should
to
be
the
able
chat
to,
as
yeah, just
well,
click on
right?
chat and you can add to the message will go to everybody.
Yes. Um, I am going to drop a link for the exchange website into the chat. You can access the exchange right from the Seed Savers Exchange homepage, but we have a separate website just for the exchange. And this time of year right now is when all of the participants in the exchange are renewing which varieties they're going to have available to share the coming year, so in 2026. And Seed Savers Exchange has also just updated all of the varieties that we are able to offer. And I believe this year there are more than 6,000 varieties from the seed bank collection that we are making available on the exchange website. And there's search tools so that you can filter by crop or by keyword or by a region of the country. So there's different ways of narrowing down the thousands of varieties that you'll see online. And it also gives you access to other home gardeners who are participating too.
Then I said thank you. Is there a fee involved in this exchange?
It is completely free to sign up to browse. Well, so a person can browse the exchange website at absolutely no cost and without an account. But if you're interested in either requesting seed from someone or maybe offering and sharing seed yourself, then creating a free online account is the next step so that there's a way to so that folks know how to contact each other, a place for contact information and a bit of information about yourself if you have seeds to share. So folks sometimes have a cost associated with the shipping or what it takes to mail the seeds, but the costs are fairly minimal. So there's no fee to join or any kind of annual fee to participate. No.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, if there's something that you're curious about, I'd be happy to or to direct your email to the most appropriate person here on staff. We have a number of educational opportunities, programming, events that happen during the year. Take a look at our calendar. If you happen to be in the area, you might be visiting at a time when we have an event going on. Um, We have an 890-acre farm here outside of Decorah, Iowa, that is open to the public. We have a visitor center. We have um, an apple orchard. There's hiking trails. It's a real scenic area of Iowa, very hilly and wooded. So we welcome visitors if you're ever close by.
Thank you all for joining us and have a good evening.